Up, what's up, what's up? Hold on one second. There we go. What's going on? Instagram Live, YouTube. We are here hanging out. It is Friday. It is Q&A day, and that means it's time to answer your questions. What's going on? I'm assuming that there's going to be lots of questions today about Supreme Court decisions, other stuff like that. Happy to answer any questions, give you my opinions, tell you opinions of other people, because I've been talking to people about this for a while, because this has kind of been known to be coming down the pike. So not a huge shock what happened yesterday, but definitely lots of fear and anxiety around it. So happy to answer any questions about your pre-med path, answer any questions about anything in general, about getting into medical school. So if you are new here to Instagram Live, to YouTube Live, I will bring you on live and we'll chat about it. We will chat about it. I see you commenting on Harry Mack videos. Rule number 1, never miss a Harry Mack video. Or a Dr. Gray Instagram Live. I think those go hand in hand. Am I on the same level as Harry Mack? I'm super sad. Harry Mack is coming into Denver next week, and I am not going to be here to go. I'm headed out of town, so unfortunately, I will not be going to Harry Mack next week. But I would love to. So yeah, I love me some Harry Mack. That man is talented. So let's talk about, right. Let's have a conversation about the Supreme Court decision. Let me post a link real quick. For those of you on YouTube, you can request to join me on YouTube, and for those on Instagram, you can just request to join me live here. So big picture, is this going to affect URMs? Yeah, potentially, right? I think the California data showed that there was a significant drop in specifically Black and Hispanic applicants to the, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was UCLA and Berkeley data that showed like a 50% drop in admissions for those underrepresented students. And California's been trying to figure out ways, right? California banned affirmative action back in 96, 97, somewhere around there. It's been a while. And so we have many states in this country where affirmative action has been banned. The Supreme Court obviously just banned it throughout the whole country. And so we have states that we can turn to say, hey, what has happened in these states? So it'd be interesting. A lot of the data, if not all of the data, is from college admissions, not medical school admissions, which I would think is different. Obviously, there's a lot of college applications coming in, so there may be some differences there. But I had a conversation. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick on my computer. Let me find my web browser here for a second. So I talked to Dr. Cedric Bright. He's the director of admissions, dean of admissions at ECU. And we talked about, this was several months ago that I talked to Dr. Bright. Let me bring it over onto my thing here. So Dr. That's not the right one. Medical School HQ. There we go. So premedyears.com/513. I'll type it here in Instagram, premedyears.com/513. the title of that episode is The Power of the Underrepresented Student. And in that episode with Dr. Bright, I specifically asked him, I said, hey, this Supreme Court stuff is coming out. I think we see the writing on the wall that affirmative action is going to be gone throughout the country. What is going to happen? How is that going to affect your admissions decisions? And Dr. Cedric Bright is a huge advocate for DEI. He's a black man. Not that all black men have to be advocates for DEI, but he's a big advocate for DEI initiatives. And he straight up said, it's not going to affect us. We don't use race in our admissions now at ECU, so Eastern Carolina University. And he said there are so many pieces of data that we can use for diversity that we don't need race as a kind of standalone, isolated piece of data, which is what the Supreme Court is saying, hey, you can't use this, right? And again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I have enjoyed having many conversations with the people who theoretically are affected by this, the deans and directors of admissions, the ones that are trying to, hopefully, increase diversity at their institutions, right? So I think big picture, for the institutions that value diversity, I don't think this is going to change much because they have had tools at their disposal to figure out who are the diverse students. They ask in their secondary questions about diversity. And I've said for a long time, and it was funny, I was actually having this conversation with a dean of admissions just a few weeks ago at a conference, and we were talking about this issue of diversity. It was a very good conversation. And we were talking about these secondary essays about diversity. And I said the advice that I give to students is, if you're a white person, you can still answer questions about diversity because diversity is about experiences. It's about your lived experiences, which is what the Supreme Court is basically saying. It's like, hey, don't just use skin color, value the experience. And the same thing for a black or brown student, Hispanic student who says, hey, answering a question on a secondary essay that says, what value, what diversity do you bring to our school? I've seen so many essays that are basically, right, superficially, I'm black, therefore I'm bringing diversity. And that's not the right answer either, right? Because that, again, is just skin color. What has your lived experience been because of the color of your skin, because of the town that you grew up in, because of the socioeconomic status that you grew up in, because of the disadvantaged kind of world that you've been in, regardless of skin color? That is ultimately what medical schools and what colleges are going to lean on now. And so it's imperative for you as you go through this process to tell your story. It's even more important now to tell your story, to help that reviewer, that reader, that admissions committee understand the lived experiences that you have had. Not just your skin color, but the experiences that you have had, the lens that you look through life with, potentially because of your skin color, but potentially because of just growing up in a socioeconomically depressed area as well. Where does Medical School HQ stand on affirmative action? That's what we're talking about, my friend. So I think the affirmative action case is what it is. Obviously, the Supreme Court made their decision, and until the Supreme Court changes, potentially the supposedly nonpartisan Supreme Court changes, it is what it is for now. And again, it's imperative for you as the applicant to tell your story, to talk about your experiences. And I think, right, obviously as a white man, I can't sit here and go, I understand, right? I can only try to understand the feelings that you all have, some of you, right? And not every Black person is on the same side of the aisle. Not every Black person is looking at this affirmative action case, and not just Black, right? Black, brown, Hispanic, Latino, etc. So Servant for Change says it's going to be harder. I don't know, right? Again, I've had conversations with the deans and directors of a few medical schools who have said it's not going to impact them at all because they have other ways to measure this stuff. They have other ways that they are evaluating students for diversity outside of just skin color. So we'll see. It should all be based on merit, enough of racial privileges. I disagree, right? I disagree. I would love for it to all be based on marriage, assuming everyone had equal chances, right? If we lived in some of the Scandinavian countries where every single elementary school gets the same amount of funding, every single elementary school, every student gets the same support. But that's not true in this country. And so we have people who are born into poverty who make it really hard to get out of that poverty because of how our systems are set up. And yeah, that's called systemic racism. I believe in it. You may not believe in it. That's okay, right? You can go educate yourself. You can learn about that kind of fun stuff. So I have my stance on it. And so the question is, what is merit, right? Is a higher MCAT score merit-based admissions? No. What does a higher MCAT score mean? Doesn't mean anything, right? So I don't know. Adrian, you want to come on and talk? I don't know. So we'll see. I think, again, ultimately, this just happened yesterday. Lots of people are scared. They're worried. The only thing that you as an applicant can control is how well you do with your grades, how well you do with your MCAT score, the activities that you're doing, these other things that you're doing, and you just apply and tell your story. That doesn't change, right? It doesn't change. And again, the schools that value diversity are still going to find ways to find you, right? I think one of the biggest potential changes is that there may be more schools asking diversity questions in their secondary essays because they're not going to be able to go Black, white, Latino, whatever. They're going to go, hey, what diversity do you bring? And they're going to have to read some essays and go, oh, I can probably assume that this person is Black, but it's not just because they're Black. It's because of this amazing essay that they just wrote about their lived experience. That's why I want to talk to them. Talk to me, Adrian.
The lived experience is going to be... Listen, I have the lived experience, right? I am
really?
The
Let me see.
I
thought that was just... no, what's going on, my friend?
A story I like to tell is
Preach.
When
Talk
I was
to
in
me.
undergrad, I was in like some kind of general education class, like a communications class or something. And we were talking about hiring preferences and how people shouldn't be hired based off of their race. And this student was 20 and she's like, I grew up poor. I lived in roach infested home and I worked hard to get to where I am and be able to go to college. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's a lived experience. Mm-hmm. However, I had the same lived experience. I'm 10 years older than you, sitting in the same classroom, because it took me that much longer to reach this point. Mm-hmm. That's the story I need to share about education in America. Yes, it's a great equalizer. I am a firm believer in that. But the process to be able to get the education, the process to be able to sit in these seats is different for me than it is for somebody else. The path that I had to walk to get here is not the same as anyone else I've ever met. And that's just a fact.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just the color of your skin, right?
No.
There are lots of other people who are white from rural, very underserved, very disadvantaged populations that have what I would assume is very similar paths as you. Not again because you're Black, they're white. It's because of our socioeconomic
resource poor,
poverty,
financially poor.
Correct.
I look at my kids my daughter is getting ready to take a high school placement exam so she can apply to private schools for high school. Sentence I never would have applied to myself, ever.
Yeah.
But I bought her books.
Mm-hmm.
I having her complete a portfolio. I have people helping her with her portfolio. This is because I am in a position to be able to do that for her.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I was just having this conversation with the dean of admissions at a medical school, and he was having this conversation of wait a minute, you worked your butt off as a parent to provide for your kids, but you're telling these other people that advantage shouldn't be an advantage, right?
That's not an advantage.
But you worked your butt off, right? But now your kids potentially have an advantage over your life growing up.
Will.
Yeah.
They absolutely will, because that is my goal in my life, that my kids don't have to do the things that I had to do to be able to sit in the seat.
Yep.
That's my job as a mom, is to make sure that they don't have that. And if other parents are able to do that, that's fine. But don't look at this other student that did not have those resources, did not have that money, still ran circles around you academically to get this seat, and then say, oh, you don't deserve to be here because you got here for affirmative action. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That does not make sense to me.
It's just lazy thinking.
Because I've been told that plenty of times, that I'm taking somebody's seat. And I'm like, I have my GPA, I have my MCAT score, I have my research, I have all the things that you had to be here. And on top of that, I have the life experience that you don't have.
Yeah.
So explain to me where you stack up next to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And Adrienne, for those who don't know, you are reintegrating as a third-year medical student after finishing your PhD years as an MD PhD student. You also, because you had lots of free time, got your MBA as well. So you're out there hustling.
Only a little bit. Only a little bit.
Only a little bit.
But it's when I first met you and you interviewed me and you talked to me about race and admissions, I told you that I wanted to make sure that I was an applicant that they could not say no to. Mm-hmm. And if after all the things that I did, if someone was equally stacked with me and then they had to decide, okay, who do we pick? Sure, you can take my life experience and use that as a deciding factor. But I made sure when I went to this school, when I applied to medical school, that I was an applicant that was competitive.
Yeah. Period.
Nothing was handed to me in this process. But then to have that thrown back to me is, oh, well, you're just here because you're a diversity choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be interesting, right? Again, the affirmative action case specifically says, and again, I'm not a lawyer. I haven't read all 230 pages of that ruling. But from the lawyers that I have listened to on TikTok mostly talk about this. Reddit, TikTok, all of those fun places. I'm trying to stay away from Reddit because they've been mean to developers. The kind of big overarching ruling is you can't look at race. Again, they're not saying you can't look at how race affects those lived experiences. So theoretically, a medical school, and again, I've had these conversations with several deans and directors who have said this isn't going to affect us. Theoretically, the diversity essay in a secondary application, they could weight that in their rubric if they're using a rubric, and they can say, if this person has some lived experiences that potentially shows that they come from a disadvantaged background, potentially shows that they're overcoming obstacles, potentially shows X, Y, or Z, which unfortunately a lot of times is a stand-in for race. Yeah. We can still say, hey, we are trying to level the playing field. Yeah. We value that. We see you.
I filled out disadvantaged statements in my med school applications. Yeah. And it was separate from race. It just talked about access to medicine. It talked about parental income. So I fit all those things, even if I were not Black.
Yeah.
It just so happens that I am also Black.
Yeah.
So did I fill out those disadvantage statements? Absolutely, because the reason why it took me so long to get into medical school was because of those reasons. Like those are the things that I had to overcome to be able to apply to medical school.
Yeah.
So I think that those are things that should be considered. But just the whole thing has made me feel pretty icky.
Why? Talk about that.
Um,
Is it the ruling, or is it all of the chirp around the ruling? Yeah.
The response.
It's
to
the chirping.
ruling.
Yeah.
The ruling, whatever. Like schools are gonna admit students based off of their own criteria.
Yep.
It's the people responding to it.
Yep.
That makes me. I wear a shirt that says "Black and Educated" today. Like,
oh, nice. I love it.
Like, because I think we're all trying to accomplish complicated, difficult things, and the path to getting there, I think, is something that should be considered when accepting students.
Yeah.
If you've had in your mind that you want to become a physician for your entire life, and you've consistently worked towards that for your entire life and met the criteria for admissions, the obstacles that you had to overcome to get there should be considered as part of application process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think getting a little political potentially and arguing the one thing that I saw in the ruling that someone pointed out was the fact that they made this carve out for military academies, right? You're a former military member. I'm a former military member, both veterans, right? They made this carve out for military academies, specifically saying, hey, it may be important to think about the diversity of our military leadership, so military academies can still use
but
race.
Not the diversity of our
but
physicians,
not
the diversity of our lawyers, not the diversity of any other occupation.
That to me was like, what? I don't understand that. So it seems like they understand the value of diversity. They just don't want white people and Asians to potentially be at the cost of that. I said it, not you.
I can't understand it because I don't share that mindset.
I don't know. Right. And I come from my lived experience, right? I was a first generation college student, a 4-year college student. I think my grandmother went to like a 2-year college. My mom, my stepdad, the two people that raised me, didn't graduate high school. And so when I was in college, I was trying to navigate this all on my own. And this was back in 98, 99. I'm old. My pre-med advisor said, Ryan, you're not going to get into med school. You're a white male. There's too many of you applying, right? So this idea,
the whole thing is just,
it's been around forever. It's not going to go away.
The whole thing, just burn it down. Just
burn it down.
Evaluate a student holistically, and this won't be a problem.
Yeah. So how do you do that, right? Because many people out there, I assume they're on one side of the aisle, but a lot of people will just say merit-based, right? MCAT score, GPA.
But that's not. When my kid is ready to take the
LSAT, you already know the path they're going?
Blair is going to be a lawyer. She argues everything, every day, all day, loves looking for loopholes.
Love it.
When she's ready to take the LSAT, she's going to have everything that she needs to make sure that she's prepared to do well. And I will make sure that I pay for that. When I took the MCAT, I used a free set of books that the veterans office at my school had. And that's how I studied for the MCAT. I was a fee assistance program recipient, so I was given access to a study guide and I think a practice exam.
Yeah.
But that was the resources that I had available to me, so that's what I used.
Yeah.
The standardized testing thing for me is always going to be a point of contention, because I just don't know if that's the best way to determine if someone is academically sound and able to, because that's not the best way for me to be tested. I don't like multiple choice exams. I prefer essay exams. So I just saying, oh, merit-based GPA and MCAT score, that's not it. It needs to be a holistic view of the student.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's but then you have that conversation again. I keep going back, and I'm not naming the person just out of respect. Having a very potential contentious conversation. We were alone kind of in the hallway. Nobody else was around us. And we were having this conversation about race and admissions and all this stuff. And this dean of admissions, the next day we were talking about MCAT. And he's like, great, take the MCAT away. How do I review 8,000 applications? And he's like, I agree with you. Take it away. But this is also a dean of admissions who's very proud that his average MCAT score at his school is 518. I'm like, he on both hands is like, the MCAT is useless, but we need something. And look how high our number is.
This number's important to us, but the test is stupid. I mean, it's the same thing with STEP and choosing your whole medical specialty based off of a score.
Your step 1 score. I've had that conversation forever. I'm like, are people really interested in dermatology, or are they going into dermatology because they got their step 1 score back and go, oh, I crushed that.
I can qualify.
What can I get into now? Right?
Exactly. It's like taking the ASVAB.
Yeah. And I've wondered the ASVAB. Did I tell you I got caught cheating on the ASVAB, or they accused me of cheating on the ASVAB? I didn't get caught. They like it was that math.
So easy.
I know. It was like the rapid math section where it's like all the math, and they're like, okay, pencils down, and I'm like, oh, but my bubbles are not neat. So I was just fixing my bubbles, and they're like, they snatched the test.
You bubbled in your test.
Oh, yes.
You took a paper test.
It was a paper ASVAB in my high school auditorium. Yes, that's how old I am. Shut up. Anyway,
you're only a little bit older than me.
Anyway. Yeah, and then they can call me Major now, so whatever. But yeah, what was I talking about? I don't know. Oh, the step 1 score, right? So I wonder, like, how many physicians are burnt out who don't like their specialty because they chose their specialty because they could get into it based on their step score.
Or the opposite, they're in a specialty that they don't like because they didn't feel as though they qualified for the specialty that they wanted.
Correct. Exactly. So
standardized testing is stupid.
Yeah, it's hard, right? And
I went through medical school. I have the degree. Why can't I qualify for this specialty that I want?
Yeah. It's really hard. Again,
why do I have to have 20 publications?
But do you have to? Right? It's like we're chasing these charts that the NRMP puts out. I'm like, is there correlation or causation? Right?
It's causation. I had someone tell me recently, plastic surgery applicants in your position and training have already had this many conference appearances and this many publications. I'm like, plastic surgery applicants at this stage in their training compared to me aren't moms with 3 kids and aren't trying to get a PhD. And
yeah,
I'm going to have what I have when I apply. I'm going to do my best.
You do your best. Cross your fingers. You're working hard.
I'm working in the system that I'm in. This is the life that I'm living. So this is what I'm bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I think that brings it back to this whole conversation about, like, what should pre-meds be thinking about, right? Again, you're working and living in the system that is built that isn't necessarily built specifically for you, but you can't affect that. The only thing that you can affect is what you do day in, day out, the effort that you put into it, the time that you put into it, the connections that you make. You're out there doing everything in your power right? And I think that's what students need to understand. Yes, we can be upset about what happens. You can be mad about it. You can whatever, but that doesn't change today when you wake up, tomorrow when you wake up.
I say that all the time.
Go work in the system.
The life that I had yesterday is the life that I have today is going to be the life that I have tomorrow. So all you can do is make yourself the best applicant possible.
Yeah.
The best applicant that you can submit. That's what you need to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the thought, and it's interesting, Gonzo just brought this up, but the thought that for the medical schools, again, that value diversity, and there are plenty of medical schools out there that don't.
My school.
Right? There are plenty of med schools out there that don't, right? Your school with Dr. Sandra Quesada as the Dean of Admissions there. She's awesome. She's speaking at MappedCon in October. So that's super exciting. You'll be at MappedCon in October. The institutions that value diversity will find quote unquote ways around this, which I think they've already been doing anyway.
Yeah.
So
it's already
again,
been
it doesn't change much.
I definitely filled out disadvantage statements, diversity statements. I definitely filled that out when I applied. So, and this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I applied to medical school a long time ago. So, and it was in multiple schools. It wasn't just one or two. It was majority of the schools I applied to had some kind of statement or secondary question. Who's this?
Hey, sorry, I wanted to put a request on and join the chat.
Yeah. Do you want to join this conversation, or do you just have a question?
Yeah.
Should I peace out?
Yeah,
no, stay.
I was in and out of it doing some Anki and stuff, but the whole conversation remained the same. So I was like, you know what, let me just jump in this, and if I got a couple points, I'll say it. But I like the conversation that you guys are having right now. The fact that, they've been already trying to find ways around the system that's already been built. But my concern is mainly if this Supreme Court ruling is it going to make it more difficult for the system that we've already have been built in terms of answering a question for diversity? We obviously don't know that because this just recently passed. And, now instead of having the diversity statement, I believe it's called other essay or other, I forgot they changed the name.
So it's very interesting. Hold on 1 second.
Right.
The language that you just used, the essay is the disadvantaged essay. And you, Freudian slipped, are saying, hey, that's the diversity essay. Right?
Yeah.
So they're not synonymous, although I think a lot of people kind of see them as synonymous.
There's a lot of overlap in those Venn diagrams.
If there's a Venn diagram, I was just going to say, if there's a Venn diagram, it's kind of a circle. Yeah, so it's other impactful experiences. And I think kind of what you're mentioning, Kevin, is the fact that the essays are going to have a bigger role now, not a lesser role. They're going to have a bigger role because the Supreme Court is not saying you can't look at any data that potentially says they're disadvantaged, they're a minority, whatever. They're just saying you can't look at those race check boxes.
You just can't say.
Now it's up to you to really.
Do some reading.
Now it's up to you to really make sure that you tell them your entire upbringing and just do your best. The best that you can.
But you should have been doing that anyway.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
But now it just
solidifies the fact
my
that
journey into medicine.
Yeah, but now it just solidifies the fact that if you don't bring that up in your essays, it just puts more emphasis on your essays at this point.
Yeah.
You should be talking to Dr. Gray about how to write your personal statement.
Personal statements, your activities, that other impactful experiences. Boxes. And I wonder, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together until just now. My assumption, it'd be interesting. I'm not gonna reach out. They don't like me. I was gonna say I'm gonna reach out to the AAMC. My assumption is that other impactful experiences was a preemptive response to this affirmative action case ruling.
They knew it was coming. My school had a statement already written.
Yeah. Oh, they all knew.
They put it out like immediately after.
I know.
Like we all got an email. Like I saw the post on Instagram and then I got an email. So they knew it was coming.
The University of California system apparently was already on top of that. They've been
Late 90s, it was banned.
Yeah.
So nothing new. And it was banned
they
in several
said
states.
that actually decreased diversity on their campuses as a result, though.
The college campuses, I think, were impacted a
Mhm.
lot more. I think the college campuses, and I'm not super familiar with the whole what's that college application, the college what do you call that thing?
Um,
The
I have
college
to
app,
look, sorry. I applied directly to my college.
I forget that there's like there's a special name.
The one application.
Yeah,
or something
like a one
that.
app, single app, whatever they call it. I think it's much harder, right? In medical school admissions, we have the benefit now.
The common app.
The common app. There you go. We have the benefit, which we don't like all of the secondary applications and the fees that we have to pay, but it's a huge benefit today because those medical schools, again, that value diversity can ask a diversity question and get out what they need to make admissions decisions to continue, hopefully, their diversity initiatives on campus. And
I still remember that $80 fee in Maryland.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, right, you hear my words, the diversity initiatives, a lot of people are like, who cares about diversity initiatives? Everyone should care about diversity initiatives because the data shows that the more diverse environment that students are in, the better the outcomes for everyone. For everyone.
I appreciate it as a diversity of thought. So how you are going to interpret a situation and come up with a solution is going to be different based off of all of your life experience.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a variety of life experiences, you're not going to have a variety of solutions.
Yep. Exactly.
It's also having and feeding back to what you said, if you have a diversity class that's willing to go out and do different things and service different communities, it further shrinks the gap in healthcare disparities, which is obviously very vital because we also have not a lot of people going into primary care, and majority of the populations that needs to be seen are those, disadvantaged or vulnerable populations that, just we make the difference in that field for the most part.
100%. So I want to point out, and I think a lot of people are misinterpreting this Supreme Court ruling, just like L. Quellen says here. How can we contribute to diversity besides literally struggling with something involving our ethnicity or race? Can we contribute to diversity via acceptance of mental health? I'm assuming is MH here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So my assumption is that they're misinterpreting this ruling as saying, even my struggles, the obstacles that I've overcome, the things that I've been through because of my race, even that is and has to be ignored. And no, that's exactly the opposite of what the ruling was. The only thing that these institutions have to now explicitly ignore and can't make any decisions based off is just the checkbox. Race and ethnicity.
Not the experiences of that
Not the experiences.
Not, and I mean, diversity doesn't just mean race. It, like I said, it means socioeconomic status. It means disability. It means any of those, anything that is different, bring them together. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you struggled with I know plenty of Black students that are African American, not Black American, that are like, I don't really identify with this Black experience because I didn't grow up that way.
Yeah.
I literally had a student, we were volunteering with mentors for inner city Baltimore students. And she's like, I don't know if they'll identify with me because I grew up upper middle class and I don't have the same life experience. And I'm like, they'll be just fine to see another brown face. It'll be okay. So you don't have to have struggled or had the same struggles or anything of those natures. You just have to, like I said, put the best foot forward. Put you in the best place possible to be the best applicant that you can be.
That's also my concern too, going back to the story that you just said about that individual that didn't feel like she had those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes back to now really researching these programs and making sure that you really truly identify with their mission statements at this
Yeah.
point. Now, does it mean that you have to do that? That's up to you. But if you want to have I guess, if you want to take an effective approach because of this ruling now, it makes even more sense now to really apply to schools where you can correlate and feed into their statement and what they're all about.
So what I always tell students when they talk to me about this is that the school is interviewing you, but you're interviewing the school. So you have to choose them just as much as they have to choose you. If you don't get a good vibe with the school and you don't feel like you would fit there, then don't go there. But the purpose of the interview is both ways. You have to figure out if you fit there, and they have to figure out if you're a fit for them.
Yep. That's it.
That's my thoughts on that.
That's all I gotta say about that.
I'm looking for papers for my manuscript.
That's fun. All right, you get back to work.
It's not fun.
Keep up the hustle.
I'm very tired. But yeah, no, just same thing that I've been saying this whole time. The people who didn't like you yesterday still don't like you today. The people who were going to support you yesterday still support you today. You just got to keep moving forward for yourself. In the skin that you were born with, in the life that you were born with, just be yourself and do your best and let the excellence follow you.
Love it.
And on that, I'm going back to work. Bye.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yep.
All right. Kevin, you have any questions?
Yeah. I do got one more question before I let you go.
Yep.
It's probably a little too hard to even consider this, but when it comes to personal statement composition now with this whole ruling thing, I know that for the most part, characters obviously count. You want to just stick to your stories and, tie it up in this one little nice, neat bow so that it all flows fluently. But when it comes to this whole situation going on, what are your thoughts on including diversity and ethnicity in your personal statement? Do you still think that we should leave that in your quote unquote diversity essay to save characters for stories, or because of this ruling, would you change your approach?
Yeah, I don't think I changed the approach. I think the personal statement is still, why do you want to be a doctor? I think the the other impactful experiences is basically going to be that diversity essay. Talk about those lived experiences. And remember, just kind of going back to that comment earlier, the lived experiences, because of your race, are still valid. They're still important. Those can still be used as points and other stuff and stuff for admission. Yeah. So all of that stuff is still valid. So I think, again, medical schools are in a unique position because they can ask diversity questions in the secondary applications. And I think, again, AMCAS changed that disadvantaged essay to this other impactful experiences. My guess is it kind of in response to this ruling that was coming down. So I think that is a perfect spot for it. And it doesn't muddy the water of what the personal statement should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, because when I saw that change, I'm like, what's the point? I mean, you're just rewriting the same thing in just a different way. Like, what was the...
Yes and no, because the problem is that so many people would say, oh, but I'm not disadvantaged, right? I grew up in a middle class area. I grew up in this. But their experience, and there was a perfect Reddit thread about this. A woman was talking about her experience coming from a very strict religious background and her wanting to be a physician. And she was basically ostracized by her family, saying that is not what a woman should be. A woman should be someone who stays in the home and has kids and blah, 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 right? Very strict religion. And she was kicked out of her house as, I think, a high school student, and had to figure out where to live for a while, and then was brought back in the house. But her upbringing was one from means, right? Her family had money, at least according to this Reddit thread. And so lots of people were like, no, you can't mark yourself disadvantaged because you had money, right? And I came in there, I said, absolutely not. That's not the definition of what this disadvantage essay is. And so just that change of language, the change of that presentation makes it so much easier for lots of people to go, oh, I can write about something even though my family had money and I didn't need for anything or want for anything.
I get you. So it levels the playing field in terms of experiences without having to consider your socioeconomic status or where you're from, because that all, as much as that seems to have a correlation based on data, they want to just mitigate that aspect to give everyone a fair chance of explaining where they're from and what they went through, but not telling us, hey, I'm upper, middle, or lower class.
You got it.
Got it. Okay. I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah. Take care.
Awesome. You too.
Bye. All right. Heavy discussion here. I'm going to close out.